Hello and welcome. We're making another QLab video where we're going to be looking at the Applescript queue from a few videos ago called Set Color by Type. In that video, I mentioned something called the DRY principle, which stands for Don't Repeat Yourself. It's a coding philosophy. Our update from the other video made that script a lot better. It made it comply with DRY a lot more, but we can do better. So let's take a look at that. While we're doing this, we'll get to see a little bit more of the deeper workings of QLab, so that'll be nice. So again, this is our QLab set color by TypeScript. What it does is it checks for a red queue because I use red queues for warnings. So it'll ignore red queues and then it'll check for the type of the queue, and depending on what the type is, it will set an associated color. But we're still repeating ourselves. It looks like 8 or 9 times here. Instead of just really, we'd like to trim that down. So in my first video, the projector manager video, we used this thing where we had this list of options, and then depending on what the user responded, we grabbed the corresponding action from that list. And I want to implement something like that with this. So the first thing I'm going to do, and I'm actually just going to copy this over from my finished version because this is a lot, but I'm going to make a list of lists. I'm going to make one big list that has all of these little lists of types into one. So let me go ahead and grab this. Grab this right here and go ahead and bring this over. So I will paste that in. And as you see, that's one really long list. When you put this into the script editor instead of VS Code, this will format and it'll all fit on the screen, but VS Code, like I said previously, there's some trade-offs. The other thing we'd like to do is we'd like to make another new line under this, and we'll create a new variable called colors list. And this list will be a list, and what we're going to do is we're going to skip red because this isn't a type check. This is just checking the queue color. But we're going to start with down here, and we're going to add each of these colors in corresponding order so that they match. Green will come first, and then blue, and then purple, so that they match the order of the lists in our each list variable. So the first one we're going to do is green, and we'll add blue, blue, then we'll add purple, and then it is gray. Again, gray is spelled with an E, orange, and finally yellow. So now that we have this, we can run a loop, and depending on where in the loop we find our target queue, we can use that index to grab the color from colors list. That's a little confusing if you've never seen it before, so let's see how that codes out. So the first thing I want to do, I put these in the wrong spot. I'm going to grab these two lines, and then I'm going to just move them up above the repeat section and put them at the right level of indent. So then at the beginning of this, this will still be our first thing. Oh wait, I'm sorry, it won't be. I want to, one more thing. Just checking my notes. Nope, right here after we set color queue, I want to put a line in here. We're going to add a variable called set my count to 1. So this will track our index as we go through our loop, and check each of the different list of types. So then we will, once we have that, we will check our queue color, and if the queue color is red, we'll do this, and if the queue color is not red, then we're going to start a new loop. So I'm going to insert a line here that says else, and you know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to comment all of this out, all of this, including this end if, because we'll close our if up top, because we're not going to end up using any of these previous else lines. We're going to replace all of this. Control, so let's get rid of that, and we'll add a new line under this. So if we find a queue that is not red, and we do, that means it's a queue we want to apply a color to, we're going to start a loop where we loop over the different lists in each list. So for this list, and this is one of those places where your variable naming can come important, because so when we get to this list lets us know we're at one of the sublists. Each list is the one that we'll actually be iterating over. This list, we're just looking at its contents. So for is not Applescript, that's Python, excuse me. Repeat with each list. So in another video, we had a repeat until. A repeat until is similar to a while loop in other languages. Here we're using a repeat with, and that's similar to a for loop in other languages. So repeat with each list, I'm sorry, I got that backwards. Repeat with this list in each list. So that's going to take each of these subgroupings inside of the curly braces. Those are the lists. Each of these subgroupings inside of this big list that's called each list. So we're going to repeat with all of these things. We'll go down a line, go in, and we're going to check now. We're going to do our Q type check. So if Q type of color Q, excuse me, target Q, is in this list, so that's the sub list, that's the smaller group. So if it's any one of these options, it doesn't care which one. If it's any of them, then we'll do some stuff. If it is that thing, then we're going to set the color. We're going to do my set color, and this is the new thing. This is the tricky thing. This is the fun part. Color Q's the same, but now we're going to grab item my count of each list. So remember, we set my count to 1 at the beginning of our loop. And what we haven't done is we haven't incremented it, but we're going to do that later. So let's go ahead and finish this out before we talk it through. I'm sorry. Oh, stupid autocomplete of each list. And then we'll close that off. And that's the only thing we need to do. So then we'll close our if. Yep. And then we will set my count to my count plus 1. So in Applescript, that's how you increment things. You have to say set my variable equals my variable plus amount. So here my count plus 1. So this will increment us every time through the loop. It'll keep track of what iteration of the loop we are on. So the way this works, oh, and then we'll go ahead and put our end repeat down here. Sorry, autocomplete again. End repeat, and then we will add end if. So this was the if check that checked if it's red, and if it wasn't red, it started the repeat for checking the Q types. That's what this end if is doing. And then we're going to set my count to 0. So when we get down to this part, this is the very end of our repeat, our outer loop, where we do, because we're running 2 loops now. So let's do one more end repeat. And then way down here, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and delete both of these lines so that they're not off screen. And then we'll come back up and add a line that says until. and then I'll put that down at the bottom of the screen. So now just to step through all of this, everything we did, we're just going to go, because I think mostly up to the, no, let's go back to the beginning. We'll step through all of it. So in the beginning, we have our tell block like we normally do. Then we grab the selected, we take the selected cues as a list and store them in this variable. We make a new variable that is a list of lists. Lists are things that are surrounded by the curly braces. I don't think I've ever actually said that. So this is a list of one item that is group. This is a list of, looks like 5 or 6 items, and these are different media types. I'm sorry, these are different control types. Here's different media types or different execution types. So anyways, there's a bunch of different types. They're split into lists of like objects. Then we have another variable that is a list of colors. And these colors are correlating to the lists, not of the individual types, but the lists that are subgrouped into each list. So green is for group, blue is for network and control types, purple is for media and those types, and so on and so forth. And then we're going to start our loop like we did before, where we loop over all of the cues that are selected. That's the cues right there, and we call that cue target cue when we get to it and we're working with it. We're going to store the unique ID of target cue so that if we do end up changing any of its parameters, we only change the specific one. We're going to instantiate a counter at 1. Applescript is a 1-indexed language for my computer people. It's not 0-indexed. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. Numbers work the way you expect them to. Moving forward, we're going to have our if block that tests for red cues. If the cue is red, we're going to reassign it red and then dump out of this if test. If the cue is not red, then we're going to iterate over our list of lists, over our list of types, and we're going to look for the cue. We're going to see if we can find the cue type of target cue in one of those lists. And if it is in that list, we're going to execute the myColor function, which is still down here. We wrote this in the other video. We'll talk about that at the end just to make sure we cover everything. So we'll execute the myColor. We'll do it on color cue. Color cue, remember, is the unique ID of that cue. And we'll use item myCount of each list. So that will be the index of the list that contains the types. And that will correlate. So, if we have a network, that will be item 2 of each list, which will correlate to item 2 of colors list, which is blue. And that's what this block down here said. If it's network, make it blue. And then once we're done checking the cue types, we will set myCount to myCount plus 1. And then once we've gotten done checking all of the cue types, then we're done with our inner loop. We'll set myCount to 0 because we want to go back to the beginning of each list when we start with the next cue. Whew. That was a little nerdy, sorry. So that's a loop within a loop. We now no longer have set color repeated a bunch of times. So if we change the name of set color, we don't have to repeat it, change it in a bunch of different places. This now, the previously, so at the end of the first video, we were technically in compliance with dry because all of these steps are different steps, but this is kind of cheater dry. Now we are actually in compliance with dry, so this will work. I'm going to go over to before I go into QLab, I'll just run through this function that we wrote down here, just for anyone who didn't see the first video. In Applescript, you define functions by saying on and then a function name, and then you provide it parameters or arguments. I should say arguments, excuse me. In this one, it is user Q, which is the Q ID of the Q we're changing, and user color, which is the color from our colors list. And all we do is we just set the Q color of that Q that we chose earlier to the color that we selected earlier. And then you end functions with end color. So I think that's all of the code. We can delete all of this. We're not using any of that anymore. Um, this is good code I don't want to delete, but is no longer used in this script. If you're interested in this, watch my other video on set color by type. So this should all be done. We're just going to copy this and take it. I'm going to compile it once. Compile select successfully. We'll take it over into QLab. We'll see we've got all our different typed files again. I'm going to add a new script, and this we will call newer, better by type color. We will add its script source. We will give it the hotkey of Control B for better. So let's grab everything, and we will run Control B for better. Oh, and we got an error. Let's see what we got. Can't make audience type text. Okay. Colors list. Okay, so I did something wrong. I bet I know what I did wrong. I bet I know what I did. Of each list. Yes, yes. So right here in the where we actually invoke the function, I grabbed each list, which is our list of lists. What I actually wanted to do was, let me change this to colors list. Sorry, it's color list. Now let's grab all of this. This is what I get for not testing it before moving it over to QLab. He says as he doesn't test it before moving it over to QLab again. That's bold. Let's see how it works out, Cotton. So we're going to run this again with Control B for hopefully better. And this time we'll see we've got a bunch of new colors and our red colors are still red. And voila, we are done. We've got a new queue that is, again, it's all dry compliant. This is much better code. This is much more resilient. We're much happier. Well, as always, this will be up on the GitHub shortly, as well with the show file if you want to check it out for yourself. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Hello and welcome back. I noticed something while I was watching the video that I want to change because there's a couple little things that were pretty bad that I think we can fix that will help us out a lot. The first thing is this each list. After watching myself say this a couple times, I decided this is not a good variable name. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to change this. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. I'm going to change this to all types list. Because down here in this next place where we use that, this list and each list, that's not clear enough. So we're going to change this to all types list. I think that's just a little more, going to be a little more easier to understand. The other thing I want to do is a performance thing. I want to add this line exit repeat right here. And what this will do is if we find a queue type and we set a color, currently what we do is we keep searching. We keep searching all the way through the end, regardless of if we found something or not. So what we want to do now is if we find our queue color and we execute that, we're going to dump out of this loop and go back to the top and get the next queue in the list. Something else I've done just to demonstrate how this will make a difference is I've added this little line up here at the top that says set start time, to do shell script, date formatting as integer. So this is going to get the current time, and then I'm going to run it again at the end of the script, and I'm going to display a little dialog that will tell us the time in seconds of how long the script took to run. So let's jump over to QLab. We see, let me can grab everything and we will do Control B. This is the older, slower version that does not have that exit repeat. I added a bunch of queues so that we could see a little bit of difference. When there was only 25 queues, it wasn't quite as obvious. And so we see that took 10 seconds. So now if I clear that, and if we run Control Z, this is the one that has the exit repeat in it. This should be just a little bit faster. and this looks like this was a lot faster, 7 seconds. It saved you 3 seconds with only 100 queues. So imagine, if you had a big 1,000, 2,000 queue show, that could be a huge difference. So again, I just show you this one more time in the code, this exit repeat here once you found the thing you were looking for. Little performance things like this where you're able to optimize your performance can really make a difference. So I do recommend taking a peek for those as you go through your code. Those were the only little things I wanted to update. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Have a good night, y'all.